live. I am live, but Brian will be here shortly. And this is Real and Raw, and I am Lynn Serrano. And soon, Brian will be here. So I'm excited for Brian to show up. But in the meantime, it is just me, and I'm excited about today's topic. I discussed it with Brian, and we decided to do this topic today, and he'll be here momentarily. But I feel this topic today is something that if we go ahead and be more mindful of perception and perspectives of one another and how it can really change your life to see it from a different angle, your life can change so much just by the perception and perspective on things. So I'm pretty excited to be here to talk about this today. And I'm excited for Brian to get here so that we could talk about it today. And I went ahead and I did a little flyer on what it means. Whoops, I'm out here live. So there's dogs around and all sorts of stuff. So we'll see how we go. And Brian will be here shortly. So I want to thank you all for being here. Thank you for watching the replay. And I'm not sure if you've ever put together both topics of perception and perspective and looked at it from a different view. And this is a topic I picked today. So I've got this little thing here that I did. I'm going to take this part off here. The definition of perspective, a particular attitude towards a way regarding something or a point of view. And then there's an example there. And then definition of perception is the ability to see, hear, or become aware of something through the senses. Now, it's important to realize that we think about this for ourselves, but if you would just take for a minute and think of it from another point of view, the person that you're dealing with or that's part of it, you'd be surprised how that can really change a lot in a relationship and in your life in general. Hi, Colleen. Thanks for being here. Brian will be here momentarily. Oh, where am I now? I am Alpharetta, Georgia, and tomorrow I get to be actually tomorrow's kind of top secret, but I will see family tomorrow. So I'm really excited about that. Today is my 10th day on my journey and my travels. So it really has been a whirlwind. It's been fun. And so thank you for asking, Colleen. I appreciate that. So back to the topic here of perception and perspective. We can see this always from our perception and perspective, but then we lack in realizing how your life could be different if you would empathize and realize things from somebody else's way. And I mean, your excuse or someone else's excuse can mean something to them, but it can mean something different to you. And until you see it from their angle or from their experience, you have no idea what you're missing, because everything has a 360 angle, and we forget that. And so I just recently bought a case for my iPad, and I am so glad that there was a case made that actually has a 360 view, which we forget. Everything could be 360. It could be a whole turnaround. Whole turnaround could be where you start, but where you end in the situation. And having all the information you can to see it from different angles, you've never seen it before, it's an amazing feeling to realize that you're empowered. Like we've always said in many shows before, we don't know what we don't know, right? Same thing with the perspective and perception. We can see it one way, but that doesn't mean that that's all to it. Just like you've heard, there's his side, her side, and then the facts. Well, that's only 3 points of view, but all the people, depending on where their seat is in the arena, have a different view. So I'm really excited that Brian will be here soon and that we can talk about this topic. And let's see here. Thank you, Colleen. I'm being as careful as possible. I really appreciate you. I can't wait to spend some time talking to you too. So thank you so much. So yeah, I I really love the fact that with perspective, with your perception, you that can change even when you're driving down the road. You may think, oh, there's a mirage. You may think you're closer to something, and you don't realize that you've got miles and miles to go. Or that's just what happens when you go to Vegas too, right? You think, oh, that's just a little walk away. You don't have any depth perception, but as you get closer, you start seeing it in a different view. It's just like going through the highway. You may see some mountains, you may see some of these things, and then you realize that it's not as far as close as you thought it was. So that's the other thing with perception that that I like. It's always changing, and it changes in time. It could change from 5 minutes from now. It can change from 10 years, 5 years. The more removed you are from it, it has less feeling, less impact one way or another. It's just the knowledge you get down the road, not realizing where you're starting from and where you're at. And so I think if we took more time to realize that our perception today is going to be different from tomorrow and from years going forward, that I think we would worry less. We would realize how less control we have, and we would realize that the only thing that's changing is the way we view it. So I'm hoping that Brian will be here soon. So I want to talk all these things I just said with Brian. So I'm excited about that. And so, yeah, if you have any comments or questions, feel free to chime in. And let's see, I could give some examples of perceptions that have changed. Like I had this perspective and perception with health issues that this would be a very daunting task to go from Montana to Florida. And so far, it's been interesting. It's not exactly everything I thought it would be. And it's been pretty cool. There's my Tammy. I miss and love you too. Gosh, I can't wait to go back and see you again, girl. It's been good. It's been great. I knew I'll give you a perception here. I mean, I knew that Tammy and I were going to have a great time, but oh my gosh, to actually be with her and spend that time was awesome. And it was, where am I? I'm still at Vanessa's house, and I'll leave tomorrow, and I'll be somewheres tomorrow. I'm not going to mention because I don't know where my family members are going to be, but I will see family tomorrow. That's about all I'm going to say there, and we'll see what happens. But let's see. You had a boss that always told my staff perception of me was my reality. I'm not sure I agree now. Okay, so she told my staff perception of me was my reality. Well, it's just like you might be in a situation where you meet somebody, or they get you at a wrong time of day, or they walk into a scenario and they don't understand what's going on, and all they see is your anger. It's just like, let's go to the sitcoms like Three's Company. I know I'm dating myself, but like Three's Company, look at when they would be in a situation and then they would walk in, and all of a sudden like somebody would assume, oh my gosh, this is what's going on. It's we can take anything and misuse it. So like if somebody saw your staff was like seeing you being grumpy and mean, and they don't know the backstory, you might have had bad news. You might have realized that's not how we should do it or whatever. If they don't have the whole content, they're assuming and they're expecting. And there he is, Brian. Hi, Brian.
Hey.
Oh, welcome. So glad you're here. Now I can change that. But I put here, Brian's here shortly. Yes. So welcome, Brian. So glad you're here. So we're talking about perception and perspective. And it's funny because I was just talking about how depending on when somebody walks in a situation, what they assume is going on, it can totally be in the wrong content. And it's like you got to backtrack to set the scene. And I was talking about how 360. I did make this, Brian, and I'll just put it up there real quick. The definition of perspective, a particular attitude towards a way regarding something or a point of view. And definition for perspective, perception is the ability to see or hear or become aware of something through your senses. So you might come in with being upset about something, and because somebody's talking about something similar to what you're going through, it's very simple to say, are they talking about me? I didn't say that. Or what do they think? It's an assumption or a sense where maybe what he's feeling has nothing to do with us, or vice versa. So it really is a great topic, because when we realize that there's so many factors to take into play before you make your assumptions and assuming things. Mm-hmm. So now I'm passing it to you, my friend.
Well, that's human nature. I mean, given that context, are they talking about me? Right? No, they're not. But what you're always going to do is you're always going to go to yourself, right? And that's the thing, is that with perception and point of view, I'm not a big perspective guy. I like point of view, but it could be synonymous. It could be, we could be dealing with alike terms, if you will. But when you think it's about you, it's like usually that's probably because your reptilian brain's firing, right? Your fight or flight. You're making it about you versus like, okay, consider it has nothing to do with you, right? And we want to judge before we know the context. And so without hearing a whole story about how somebody's feeling or what they're going through, it's very easy to conclude, what you think it might be about versus really hearing the whole context of the situation and not being quick to judge, just allowing somebody to share. No, Jerry.
But you see, that's his perception.
Right.
And that's his perspective on hearing your tonality or whatever. It's just, and because maybe every time he's tuned in, you're just like so high on life. And so whatever he's, you know what I mean? So it's just like if you drive down the highway and you got weather that's just starting, you don't know if you just drove into it or if that was the starting point or the end or whatever. You don't know.
Right.
So,
and to me, this is a perception. Everybody has one. It's how we survive in the world. Mm-hmm. But the difference is what is it telling you versus on how you were raised, your belief system growing up, and actually where's the truth in it, because obviously, like, there's quotes that say perception is reality. Well, okay. Looks pissed off. Well, I'm not. So there you go.
He's laughing now. He's smiling now.
I am not pissed off, not in the least.
No, he just want to make you smile though by saying that.
But see, that's the thing, is that perception. Where's the truth in perception? Well, in reality, it's we're playing games with ourselves, right? Mm-hmm. It's a defense mechanism. We perceive things. Cool. Well, then that's where cognitive dissonance comes in, and all sorts of different psychological pieces. Is because we're more apt we're gonna believe what we see and what we witness more so than the counterpoint to that.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, a classic case is somebody that, like, let's say that there's three people, and one person doesn't like a person, one person loves a person, and it's like, well, wait a minute, how can they look out of their lenses to see that person differently? Well, depending on how they're raised, how they came across, the context about how that person didn't like them, if we break that down, more than likely we're going to see some patterns here where somebody knows somebody for a lot longer, right, than somebody that they just met, but the only thing that they have to go on is what they see. What they witness in that moment is all they have to go with, and that is not, it's not bad. It's not negative, but it's just the human condition that we have as people. That, it's kind of like yesterday or the day before, whenever, when I said, okay, don't think for a moment. Just sit here and don't think.
You got to think about that. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, you can't do it.
Right.
Now, obviously, with mindfulness and different things, you can set it aside. but we're always perceiving things, and how many times do we perceive it that it's accurate?
Right.
Usually it's not. But the difference is that if you investigate further, right? If you find out if that person really is not nice, right? I mean, there's so many different contexts that we don't have a specific example to work with. But how many times do we find out later that it's like what state of mind we were in would probably not ever give us that perception of that person?
Well, Brian, I just recently did a mock jury, and I've done mock juries before. They're a focus group on a case that's going to go to trial.
Cool.
And depending if it's the defendant or the petitioner, hiring us or whatever. But it really is. And I mean, I've got several to do when I go back, but I love the fact that, depending on what's presented to you, you're like, oh, I know this case. I know how I feel.
Right.
And then they throw more evidence and you're like, you realize you're going through a body of emotions and perspectives because of what is added to the scenery, just like a play. You think your character is this, and then you see this emotion and you're like this. So it's a continuous thing that we go through in our life. And it's hi Larry, welcome.
Hey, Larry.
And so it reminds me how quick, depending on how it's presented to you, how you can go through the gamut of different thoughts, process, and decisions, and mostly judging. It's all about what you're judging and your judgments and how they can change and what the effect it's going to have long-term, short-term, the outcome and your actions. And it's just, it's just an amazing.
Well, and completely overthink the entire thing.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Completely overthink everything.
Mm-hmm.
One thing triggered you, and then it threw everything else in a tailspin.
Right. Right.
And then there's no recovering from it. If anything, you might have to step away from it or be calmed down by somebody.
Right.
I mean, perception is a coveted place. It is. I mean, even like a point of view, of which we've referenced several times. To have a point of view is a precious thing because it's yours.
Right.
And you get to have it. Right. Just like creativity. Can you learn creativity? Sure. Can you learn perception? Yeah. I mean, you have it regardless if you want it. But the difference is that gap between your perception and who it is you're trying to relate to or what you're trying to convey, right? That gap is everything.
Mm-hmm.
If somebody, perceived you as being a loudmouth or they perceive you differently than who they are, the best thing you can do is actually have a conversation or find out what's missing, right? But if you let it go, and it's like if somebody's going to have a belief about somebody, like let's just say in a relationship or a friend or whatever, and you've done everything you could to try to resolve that or find out why they feel that way and they're not having it, well, you did everything you could do, but you can't stop being you.
Well, and that's the part that cracks me up is a lot of people have different little pieces of who I am. I'm still the same person, but I mean, I really like Zen. I like quietness. I like being with people and just chilling out. We don't need to race to here and race there to do this and that. Let's just spend the space just being. Right. And so, some people are like, they might have all these different perceptions of me, but I think it's funny because we all, depending on the time of day, whether your energy's high, whether your energy's tired, whether you're feeling sick, whether you're feeling healthy. I mean, you change 360 in one day, depending, Tammy, exactly. Let's chill. So, I mean, I'm just saying that it doesn't have to be all this facade of a perspective you feel or persona that you need to portray with everyone, because it's like baseball. It's a law of averages. Yep. It's a law of averages. You see with somebody 24 hours and you could see how they change within that week,
Well, and anybody that is trying to, it doesn't apply to people that come to, be a part of our community and watch our show. But if anybody is trying to be somebody that they're not, God bless you. Because number one, it's going to be a grind. Number two, you're not being authentic to anybody. Yeah. And number three, once you come out of this, you might not relate to anybody. Because to the people that know that you're being fake, they may not want to surround themselves with you anymore.
Yeah.
To the people that you're being fake around, they're only there for what they might be able to get from you, or intelligence or content, or who knows what. Who knows why you're aspiring to be somebody you're not, right? But eventually your habits will kick in and you're going to go back to the person that, can you change? You sure can. But why would you want to change as somebody you're not inherently you want to be?
Exactly.
Like, that doesn't make any sense. And I just love people that try to, reintroduce themselves, as somebody that's this or that, and they buy different clothes and they get a different hairstyle. But I'm like, okay, that's the facade. What did they do inside of their heart? What did they do inside of their mind to change that?
Yeah.
If they're, I'm sorry, you could spend a lot of money on, the exterior, but if you're still not a nice person, guess what? It's not going to change anything.
No, law of averages are going to show it consistently. You're still an asshole.
They might give you, you might talk to more people because it's like, ooh, look at that guy. But you're not going to have a second conversation with them because they don't want to talk to you.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's I don't understand why people have to be something that they're not. No. I just don't get it. I mean, Is it a lack of loneliness? Is it, I'm going to win people over, or I'm going to, I don't get it, because eventually they're going to see you for what you are.
Yeah. 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 And that's the fun thing. It's like, with me, what you see is what you get. And I mean, and so people are always like, gosh, you're the same way as you are on the internet, or you're the same person, whatever. I'm like, yeah, it's me. And, I mean, I just.
But once, like, especially for our business owners that we have on here, is that if you can't be, and I know that there was a debate for many years where it's like, okay, you need to be a certain person personally, but then, your business self is different. Now, the way that you show up all the time is the way you're going to be. Right. And so anybody that has this, I don't know, this thought about like they have to show up differently or whatever. Okay, you might get some transactional business, but is it going to be long term? Where they're reserving you because you don't change. You tell like it is. Like if somebody needs some service or some help, they got a problem that they need to have solved. Right now, you either can solve that problem or not. And then by your performance and what you commit to and all of that will reinforce if you get another reorder or if they want to do business with you again. But it's like I'm just going to mold myself into, really not standing up for who I am and who I'm not, what I will do in business and what I won't do in business. Well, right? If you don't declare that, don't be surprised if you're, if for instance, like if you, if there's a certain day of the week that you just rest and recover, like Sundays or family time or whatever. If there are certain days that you do that and you give those up, well, what are you telling to people? And if you do it over and over again, what is that saying about what you're willing to sacrifice?
Right. Well, I know someone that she was so into, politics that it demised her whole business. I mean, it's, success today, gone tomorrow, and I mean, so some people can have their political blah blah blah, and so be it. If that's what you stand by, that's what you stand by, and so be it. But again, you are being authentic to yourself, and you realize that maybe all the people you were doing business with were just never the right people for you, and that's the lesson to take back from that.
And that's the thing. I mean, there's a lot of people in the wedding community, people that I relate to, is that if they have one interaction with a prospective customer that doesn't go right, they throw their hands up in the airs. They get sad, they get disappointed, they get all up in arms about their process, and they bring out the magnifying glass, and if they recorded it, they're reviewing it, but they never give a second thought to, is this person right for me?
Right.
They're willing to take however many years in business in their process and throw that all up in the arms because one person
Yeah.
One prospective customer doesn't want that, or it doesn't work for.
Right.
The thing that they don't focus on is maybe my process has worked. It's just not for these people. Well, that should be a bigger indicator that you're just not right to serve those people. Does it make them wrong as people? No, not at all.
Yeah.
It's kind of like when two people look at two different cars. One person would look at X brand and see like luxury and it's well worth the money, right? It's going to last me for 9 years with minimal maintenance. Another person is going to look at that same car and say overpriced. I don't get it. It's not for me, right? Does it make anybody wrong? Absolutely not. They're just they think out of it. They look at life in a different set of lenses.
Mm-hmm.
That's what makes it interesting. But when you find your tribe, when you find your people are going to talk about it. They're going to pave the way. What's up, Scott?
Hi, Scott.
They're going to pave the way for talking to prospective customers and refer you based on like, wow, this guy he's real.
Yeah. Well, and the thing is you could have the perspective of this person stays, true to their word and integrity and all that. But then that's where you get another review from somebody else says this person's integrity wasn't whatever. But gee, maybe you didn't find out that their child just died or something happened. Right. The perspective, you don't know what content or what happened. You're perceiving all of a sudden that either Brian said this guy has integrity. Either Brian doesn't have integrity for saying that, or like I said, that's where people get messed up. The perception that you see so many reviews for a company that are great, and then you see one that's bad, but you don't understand. Maybe the person that's complaining just went through a traumatic thing and is impacting and seeing something wrong or triggered by this business. Again, you don't assume by the reviews because you don't have the perspective or the perception of what actually happened. With so many great reviews, can you maybe see that was an off day? It comes back to what I said, law of averages, like baseball.
Go ahead. No, go ahead. Let me give an example just by a couple hours south of me in Chicago, right? Anybody that's ever witnessed somebody driving in Chicago knows the difference between somebody that doesn't drive there or whatever. Now, are those people wrong just because they drive erratically and don't care about stops, speed limits? No. Right? Is it a different world? Yes. Is it normal to them to drive that speed? Yes. So is it like, am I wrong for being like, wow, these people are crazy or this guy's always on my butt? Well, not in their eyes, because this is just a normal day where they need to do what they need to do.
Yeah.
So that's an example right there that I think it's just, to me, it's so simple. Yeah. Or when somebody barges or, when you let somebody into a lane on traffic, or they don't turn on their blinker or whatever. And it's just like, okay, give people grace a little bit. We're creating all this narrative and all this story. And one of the things our brains can never do without is try to complete things. Our brain has to always try to complete stuff, right? Uncertainty, our brain doesn't do very well in uncertainty. And so if we just hang it out there, it's just like, I wonder why. Maybe that guy has an emergency to get back to. Right. Maybe he's late for an appointment or a job interview. Who knows, right?
See, and so
there's all of that.
Yeah, and there's a difference between there's a reason or there's an excuse. There's a difference, which is a good topic maybe we should talk about sometime, between a reason and an excuse. I like that. But, so it's a matter of perspective that we don't take consideration. I mean, just like the people that are driving erratic, maybe they're having a heart attack and they're trying to get themselves to the hospital.
Correct.
Maybe they got bad news or something. We don't know. But instead of just throwing anger and and distraught, just be like, I hope everything's okay. Let me get out of this person's way.
Well, and then we minimize humanity.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, like let's look at perception. Like in my family, how I was raised, I was never in the military. My dad wasn't, but my uncles were. Is that if you cry, that's a sign of weakness. Now, when I talk to other families and my girlfriend's family, It's like, you know, he was in the military, right?
Yeah.
But the difference is his family's an emotion, right?
Mhm.
I mean, let it out, share
Right.
it,
Yeah.
right? I mean, oh, could that be a masculine, you know, could that be a man versus woman thing or whatever? Who knows? But what I'm saying though is that to one person, it's like that person's weak because they're crying.
Right.
To another person, it's like, wow, that person's really sharing some feelings. They must be going through something.
Yeah.
So they're not judging. They're not, you know, they're not saying that that person's weak, right? They're leaving it open, but just how you get, you know, and like everything, there's going to be both sides to it.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know why they're doing this. I can't relate to this world, but the difference is that if you can't relate to it, you just kind of leave it there.
Yeah.
Right?
Make no judgment of it.
Correct. Versus
Yeah.
like, oh, that person, you know, and then they use all this auxiliary type of information based on how the person looks, earrings, haircut, facial hair, all of it, right? To reinforce their narrative.
Right. Yeah.
None of it has been communicated in a dialogue.
Right. Yeah, that's just like a video. You could take the sound away and you know, change the verbiage and whatever, and it could be totally, you know, that's what the media does. I mean, it distorts and misconstrues things, you know, and your perception and perspective of things become very mucky because you're watching maybe third, fourth, fifth person, you know, reporting, and it truly has nothing to do with the origin of what originally transpired in that.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, you know, I do graphic design. I mean, I can manipulate photos like the best of anyone. You know, make you think. You know, allude to one thing over another. It's just
you got the dog behind you.
Yeah, I know.
Your right shoulder.
Yeah. Yeah. He was in the pool. I had him. He was swimming earlier. He's German Shepherd and something else. I forget.
Nice.
He's got two different color eyes. He looks like a fox or something back there, doesn't he?
Yeah, it looks like a fox with the nose like that. I had to look at him like, oh my God, her green screen's moving. You know, like
Yeah.
wow, there's animals, like live animals in her green screen.
That's your perception.
Yep.
And perspective of things. Like, oh my gosh, Lynn, get out of there. There's a fox behind you.
She's really not in Georgia, everyone.
Yeah. So yeah,
she's really in Jerry's backyard.
Yeah. Oh, I can't wait to see Jerry. Can't wait. So yeah, I thought this was a really good topic today because when we realize, this is our personal perception? Do we have all the facts? Do we know what really is going on? What are we assuming? You know, just like if you saw somebody and you're like, oh my gosh, I thought that was, you know, Joe Schmo, or they reminded me, or their characteristics or their mannerism. I mean, it's just, that's your perception. And then when the person gets to meet that person, they're like, I don't see that person looking like that person. Or movies are a great thing. Some people, you know, you see the Matrix and people are like, oh yeah. Some people don't understand it. I mean, Star Wars. I mean, just like all these different things, you know, it just,
or like when somebody says, you know, it's like everybody's seen that movie. You know, and I'm like, I haven't. You know what I mean? Like, well, it's like, well, how could not everybody watch Lord of the Rings? Well,
yeah.
Some people aren't into that, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But I mean, but in that very moment, you either conclude that this person is not like me, or, well, three reasons. This person's not like me, right? And you leave it there. You disengage from that person, or maybe like you find out like, why don't you watch those movies?
Yeah.
You know, and whatever those answers are is going to reinforce how you view that person.
Right.
You know, doesn't make them wrong because they don't watch, you know, they don't go to festivals and they don't, you know, watch marathons of Lord of the Rings. Okay. You know, I mean, and that's the thing, is that what is important to one may not be important to another.
Absolutely.
You know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Same thing goes with the medical field. We may all not understand it, but I guarantee before you leave this earth, you will understand about diabetes, high blood pressure, cholesterol, all that stuff. Right. Some people go to school right away to learn it and to be educated. Some of us just don't learn that right away.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, same thing with basic car mechanics and tuning up your car. What do you need? I mean, these are things, your perception and perspectives that you can say, well, there's a mechanic that deal with it. Well, the mechanic ain't sitting with you in your car when you're on the highway and all of a sudden you hear a noise and you should say, gee, is that my tire? Is that my engine? Or is that in my shocks? I mean, you need to, until you have a perception or perspective of how important it is to maybe learn these basic things, you're assuming things. Oh, the car's broken. It's no good. Let me just trade this in for $50 or whatever.
Let's look at it even based upon where we live geographically. Okay. And I'll give you an example of somebody that I know that came to Wisconsin to present for a seminar or for a conference. And he's from Jersey, like South Jersey. And he talks.
Don't hold that against them.
Yeah, whatever. Regardless of Jersey, whatever. But, saying the F-bomb, dropping swear words, whatever, it's a part of his lexicon. It's what he does, right? But he comes to Wisconsin and he's at Mitchell International Airport, or not Mitchell, whatever it is now, Milwaukee Airport. And he's looking at people as if like they're reaching for his wallet. And what I mean by that is everybody's so nice. So his immediate response was, and I remember this because it was like 3 years ago, his immediate response was, they're trying to get something from me. That's so nice to me, and it's so simple and different that there must be something wrong.
And you know what? When I moved to Montana, that's how people felt. You're a New Yorker, got to watch out for you. You're too slick. Right. So yeah, I got that perspective too. And it was like, you're up to something. You're from New York there, and you're Latina. I'm like, it's stereotype. It's assumptions. Well, it's definitely.
And even when I still lived in the suburbs of Chicago, now I'm I can work from anywhere or whatever. But I live with my ex, and it was like, it was like a psychological, right? Just living there is that it is true that if you come from a smaller area, you're more trusting of people. But if you come from a larger area, you're less trusting of people. Okay. Now, I need social time with people, right? Go to a coffee shop, hear them make beverages, whatever. I need to be around people, right? And I wanted to find like local people I could become friends with, maybe cook with or whatever, like have fun, right? And it was like the same protocol happened for majority of people I lived around. There was only one guy, his name was Joe, who he goes, if the garage door open, come on over. And I'm like, wow, this is great because like, number one, he's not afraid of standing out. Number two, he's not going to minimize who he is in the world. Right. And it's like, he's out smoking meat or he's hanging out there in his chair with his dog, having a couple drinks. I mean, he was younger than me by at least 15 years. But it was like his mindset is like not understanding why people get so like why people are, I mean, how do you get to know somebody when every day, they open up the garage door, they pull their car in, they hit the garage door before they're even out of the car, and then you don't see them until the next morning, or they take in their garbage collection, right? How do you get to know people when there's not an opportunity? I'm like, that atmosphere is not for me, right? But to everybody that lives there, that's just the way life is, right? So,
well, it reminds me when we bought our house, there was only wooded area in '96. It was just all wooded. It wasn't developed yet. And my kids would walk every day, and then they started tearing down the trees and filling in dirt and all this stuff. My kids grew up playing on a dirt hill right across the street from our house. Yeah. And so then when they were old enough, I would drive my 3 girls every summer from Montana to Syracuse. And my kids saw this different demeanor in me. By the time we got to like Chicago, stop for gas, I'm like, girls, don't talk to nobody. They'd hear me locking the doors. I say, don't look at nobody in their eyes. Don't you go from there to here and all this. And they're like, they saw a different perspective of me. And like, I just was like, you can't be friendly out here. You can't do this and that, everywhere. Anybody got near the car, I'd say, lock the door, hit lock. They're like, What's going on? You don't do that when we're in Montana. Yeah, well, we're not in Montana no more.
I remember when, and I've shared this story on a previous show, but it's just so profound, is that my ex and I were in line to get tickets for something or whatever. And I just started talking to people. Like, people behind us, hey, where you guys here? Wow, it's really hot today, whatever. We're not going anywhere. I mean, there's a freaking line. And so I started talking to people, and she went to the bathroom, and I held a spot. And she comes back, and she goes, do you know those people? And I'm like, no, I just met them.
Yeah.
And like, you could just see the look on her face. Like, like, we don't do that around here. I'm like, why the hell not?
Yeah.
Why?
That was the same thing when I moved from Syracuse to suburbia in Maryland, but then I worked in Fairfax, Virginia. Okay. And I would go say hi to everybody, and I didn't realize that that's the South. And it was terrible, but they were like, you don't talk to those people. I'm like, what people? I'll talk to anybody.
Right.
Yeah, I didn't appreciate that.
Yeah, and just by what you said, the use of vocabulary, those people.
Oh,
that's perception. That's that alienation, so to speak.
Yeah, that pissed me off.
Yep.
So I was like, no, I don't buy into that. Right. I was the girl that would say hi to everybody in school, whether they knew them or not.
Well, and here's the thing: you're not doing it for them. You're doing it for you.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's the difference between somebody doing it and getting upset when they don't get a response. Well,
exactly.
You have ulterior motives. That's why.
Yeah.
You're not doing it just as a comment or a nice gesture.
Yeah.
That you want to be known as this person. Well, how do you get to know somebody without actually talking to them?
Yeah, I wasn't doing it to be known as being friendly. I was doing it to get to know people. How else are you going to get to know people unless you say, hi, how you doing?
It's kind of, hey, how'd that go again?
How you doing?
There we go. Okay. And the same thing applies to, dating, anything. I mean, how do you get to know a potential bride and groom without talking to them? You know what I mean? Like, to me, it's common sense, but here's a perception, right?
Yeah.
You communicate with people. You see if you like each other. Then you decide if you want to work together. Done. Right? And the several perspective is, somebody's perspective is that they may have had the experience that was a terrible thing when they did it. Mm-hmm. And so their perspective is, if I approach that person, they're going to think I like them when I don't. I mean, it's just how you perceive things can always just make or break your life and shape it in a way that you're cornering yourself in a box when you shouldn't have to be. Another one is, and this is nothing about my ex. As I mentioned in previous shows, she's a great human being. We were together for almost 4 years. She asked me to move in with her, which was something that she never did before. She even consulted with her parents over it. She's a great person. I've not talked to her in years. God bless her. It just didn't work, right? But I remember that the first time that we met, and it was about 2.5 hours one way for each of us, right? Going to me. And she thought I didn't like her because I didn't open her car door. So that was her perception. Based on how her dad courted her mom, or wherever she got that from in her past, that correlated. This guy doesn't open up my car door, so therefore he doesn't like me. Well, that's not true. I don't know if I'll open up car doors for anybody, right? It's just not my thing, right?
Well, some people were brought up, my brothers and my grandson, it's a gentleman thing that's, taught. But again, not everybody's taught that.
Right.
But it doesn't mean that you wouldn't do it if you knew that was like a love language per se. If you knew that she needed that, I bet you would have done it.
I would have done it in a heartbeat, but inherently that's not me.
Right. Because you didn't know. But her perception is if a guy don't do that, they ain't into you.
Right. Or if a guy doesn't, pull up my chair so I could sit down, right? Like, that's not me, right? No.
No, but I will say this, but perception, that could have been you if you knew that that's what to relate to her. Sure. So that's what I mean.
But there again, it's got to be something you want to do.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? It's like if they like you to do that, but it's like that's just not your thing. Well, then maybe have a conversation about something else.
Yeah.
Right? Where you can, it's like, here's how I need to be treated. Okay. Are there any exceptions to that, or is that the only way?
Right. Right.
So, I mean, this whole thing, I mean, examples is the
But-
best way that
Right.
we can perception and share perspective.
But I bet you do open the door for a girl before you walk in, though, right? You do that, right?
Well, anybody around me, of course, I'll open up
Well,
the
that's
door.
what I'm saying.
You know? Yeah.
But let's say you never knew that as being mannerism. You wouldn't have known that. You wouldn't have done that.
No.
So
But
that's what I mean.
After habit of grocery stores to appointments to whatever, I mean, you open up the door and, hey, come on in, you know, or you wait for somebody, which is even better.
Yeah.
Because it's like the look on their face, you know, it's like, oh, thanks.
And they're hurrying up.
Somebody in the hall, in the driveway or something, you know?
Yeah, and they're hurrying up.
Oh, yeah. And they're like, oh, thanks. Yeah, no problem. Or when you get the door for them, and then if there's two doors, they get the door for you. It's like, thanks again. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
This is a part that it's like to bridge that from what we perceive and what actually was meant. But number one, shut our brain off. Number two, it's not an on and off switch. And number three, we're making meaning all day long, regardless if we have an opportunity to get clarity.
Right. And that's the other thing that we find is that there's a perception of level of social economics or social upbringing. And one social upbringing is mannerism of opening the door and having manners and, you know, being polite and being proper. I mean, like, you know, people's perceptions is you can't integrate the two. You can't communicate between the two. It's a dead issue because of it, you know. Oh, Tim Gillette's here. Hi, Tim.
Hey, Tim. Hey,
welcome. Tim. So yeah, you know, again, that's why I love this conversation about perception and perspective, because if you didn't think for a minute that maybe, gee, Brian just didn't get taught that's what you do if you like a girl. Maybe he didn't get that. Maybe he didn't know that. Maybe if he knew
that'll be the last thing somebody thinks about, though.
Right, but I'm just saying that those are things that people can scale up in the column of liking somebody when it's all miscommunication.
Correct.
And it doesn't defy who you were. You just weren't in class that day for that lesson, so to speak, in life.
I was never taught that. Not my deal. I make up for it in other ways.
Yeah,
you know, what I do, sure. But I'll also be the first person to admit is that if it doesn't feel right, I'm not going to continue to do it.
Right. Right.
You know, just like I wouldn't want somebody to fake doing something that they don't like doing.
Right.
You know, it's kind of like holding on to a relationship when there's no love there anymore. What's the point?
Right.
You know, same thing applies here. But it's like that thought about why that person doesn't think that way or why they don't do that to just be an inquiry, to stay there and then ultimately have a conversation about it. That's where the power is. But the problem is that the minute that person doesn't do that, you conclude that you go from incident or situation to conclusion.
Right.
There's nothing there in between in that inquiry of like, I wonder why they don't do that. No, that middle part doesn't exist for most people. You know,
right.
Unless you've done the work to condition your brain to, you know, just stop and look at point of view and perception. It's like, you know, that person had a lime green car. Okay. Okay. Maybe they wanted something different. Maybe they got it free. Maybe they're on a project. Maybe somebody bet them that they wouldn't paint the car that color.
Exactly. And like you said, until you ask those questions, you don't know.
Right.
Because again, you don't know what you don't know.
I mean, hey, you got all these cars that are certain colors, and then you got one that stands out. It's like, hey, you know, nice car. It's the brightest car in the parking lot. You know,
and damn I only pay $50 for it. You're like, damn, that's great, and your perception can change.
Well, either that or people that got tattoos. I don't have any. I know plenty of people that do, but I find it fascinating. I ask anybody I can, regardless of what they look like, tell me about your ink.
Yeah.
You know, like what led you to, you know, to come up with that design or those colors.
Yeah.
You know, but here's the thing, the perception. Here's perception personified.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody that has a lot of ink in their intimidation factor. They're still a human being.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, anybody that owns a Harley that, you know, is you know, has their chaps on, they're big, they might live a little bit more of a adventurous lifestyle to some, right? they're some of the most giving people on the planet.
Yeah.
They start charities and they donate and they, but by that perception, you would be like, ooh, this guy might try to kill me.
Yeah.
Which is not true at all. You're making that up.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
but I just love asking people about their artwork. I love it. I love it.
Yeah, it's a great conversation.
Yeah.
That's the same thing.
And it's like when they get into it, it's like, you find out their sentimental value there. They're memorializing somebody. When I was when we were camping, one of the guys that I talked a lot to, he was an E7 in the Army, and he served for 12 years. And one of his tattoos is to memorialize a guy that swapped out missions with him and ended up passing away in an IED. So I mean, he was out on a raid the night before. He wasn't going to get any sleep, but he was signed up to do that raid the next day or that run. So somebody swapped in for him. By the time he woke up, he already passed away.
You gave me chills. Yeah.
And it's just like, tell me about that. And I didn't know this guy 10 minutes, and I asked him these questions.
Yeah.
But what gravitated me towards him, because he was in the military.
Yeah.
Memorial Day weekend, military.
Oh, yeah.
People that give everything, 12 years, come on now.
Oh, yeah.
If you're going to give 12 years of your life and you turn into an E7.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yep.
So every chance I could get, I was giving him a beverage, because, he served our country and and he's here. So.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, yeah, no, I love today's topic.
Mm-hmm.
I just love the fact that, hopefully we did our job to make people think for a minute that we should look at things from a different perspective, and the perception that you have could be totally wrong. Stir up. That's where you can stir up your belief system and realize you have it wrong. It's one way to recover from past experiences is by looking at it with a new perspective and understanding.
Well, the number one thing the number one thing for everybody, if you want to get deep on this, because your brain is going to do what it's going to do. That's just what it's meant to do, right? This goes back to the evolution days, mm-hmm. right? Is suspend any understanding or suspend any disbelief, right? When your brain is going to do what it's going to do, halt it. And to just be like, stop. There are ways to actually do that, where it's just like, here's what I'm making it mean, but here's actually what happened, right?
Yep.
What am I telling myself about this, but that person didn't communicate it with me, right? Whatever I'm telling myself, and unless they actually communicate it with me, I'm just making up.
Yeah.
And that's that, so suspending any understanding unless you hear them say it.
All right.
You know what I mean? Get rid of their visual, right? Like how they look and all of that. Just focus on the words that come out of their mouth. Not even the cadence, right? Mm-hmm. Because it's like when somebody says, some words when they're angered, like those exercises. Say this phrase with this tonality and then this tonality. Well, that's great, but that's just their interpretation of that tonality. Now, mm-hmm. if another person did it, it might not sound anything like it, because you've got one person with a perception of what that sounds like and another person that's their perception.
Yep. And that every day with all the texts that go out, that is a huge problem that we have in our relationships, is not knowing exactly the inflection, the tonality, everything about it, know?
And then that makes no sense to me in a business scenario. It's like, why would you want to continue to communicate with people if right off the bat they're disconnected? Makes no sense. Pick up the damn phone, send them a video message. I asked one of my buddies several years ago, I'm like, imagine, so we can get rid of any riffraff or any miscommunication, if every correspondence to a prospective customer or to a customer, so there's nothing that gets in the way, is all videos. Right? So they get to see your message, hear you. Whatever they conclude is what they conclude, but they don't have to decipher using this.
Right.
It's just there.
Yeah.
And
we are so quick to judge what we think the simple words mean. Yep. Like, even the okay, got it, or okay. It's like, what do you mean okay? What do you mean okay? Okay to what?
Right.
You know, especially when you've already exchanged 4 or 5 texts.
Yeah.
And which one are you still stuck on for an answer? And then all of a sudden you're like, but you said okay. I didn't say okay to that. I said okay to this. So again, it's perception, perspective, and it shapes our life every day when we okay, so it's a quick thing. It's like I've even gotten to, if I'm driving, I'll just send one letter to a person or whatever. Be like, I can't drive. I can't text and drive. Like, I ain't answering you. Like, and it's better not to say anything sometimes. It's better to just give a call and get it straightened. But we are afraid to sometimes ask the questions to correct the problem. Instead, we see it as a problem and a problem to talk about what the miscommunication is.
And the problem is in the likely problem is the elephant in the room that you don't want to confront.
Yeah. And I mean, we had a conversation one, and it was really quick after a show. And I'm so grateful you came and go, Lynn, is this what you meant? I'm like, oh, no way. And, again, but you could have just never said that to me. And you could have assumed that. And you could have just, it could have been a splinter. It could have been a splinter that was going to puss out someday, And it's just like, it takes a minute to say, well, what do you mean by this? And get that, and I'm thankful, especially my friends that are nurses and doctors and lawyers, that sometimes I'll talk faster. They know my learning disability. Go, Lynn, is this what you mean? No, I don't. And then we laugh about it. Say, okay, because it just, the brain is too fast.
Because here's the thing is that if it doesn't end well, or if it doesn't start well, it's not going to end well.
Right.
Because there's just meaning and miscommunications, so then to go to the root is almost impossible. And that's just one conversation.
And that's the thing. When you get older, you start hearing shit wrong. What'd you just say right now, Brian? And it just becomes a funny thing. But it's not funny because people can't hear things the right way. And it had nothing to do with the way they were taking it.
Right.
And it's all these little things that can help in a relationship, and communication is key. But definitely, if I don't say, Brian, I think I took this way, or if I thought you meant this way, if I don't tell him what my perspective or my perception of his attitude, then we're having a problem, because you go, oh no, I just finished the Zoom and I just had this crap going on and this going on. Oh no, Lynn, and then he could focus the attention on the subject on hand. I mean, we multitask so much every day with text and email and all these different ways. You're going to have failure in communication when you don't take a minute to actually put all your thoughts directed to the topic at hand.
Well, and this is a fact. We're the only person that thinks our own way.
How about that?
But it's like, why don't, and I deal with this. I've had it reminded of me several times. How come somebody doesn't think like me?
Life would be boring if we all thought the same.
Right. So then we got a lot of work to do on our own well-being.
Right.
To make everything neutral, to find a better way to communicate, regardless about our training, our development, our levels of schooling, whatever it is. I know that I think very three-dimensional. I think very creative, right? If I'm dealing with people that are not that, a video might be better, or heck, just transform the whole thing to make it video, right?
Yeah.
Because otherwise, you get a creative person going on something, they don't want to stop because they're in their sweet spot.
Right.
But if they're talking about like logical things, they don't want to talk logic because they don't use that hemisphere of their brain very much.
Right.
So it's like, and then you bring the hemispheres of the brain. I'm thinking creatively, but I want a logical answer.
It don't work that way.
No.
Nope. So yeah. So I hope that this brings some light to the fact, is this my perception, or is this a perspective I have, or is that their perspective or their perception?
Well, there is nothing wrong with being vulnerable to say, just so I'm hearing you correctly.
Mm-hmm.
Put it on yourself that you're not getting it, or that you need further understanding.
Right.
Never make it about the other person.
Right.
You want to connect to them. You want to make them feel comfortable. You want to make them feel valued. If it's in a business scenario, the less you talk, the better.
Yeah.
To be honest with you, the less you talk, the better.
Absolutely. Well, you guys, tomorrow I'm traveling, and I'm not putting it here, but I'm getting to see family tomorrow. Things have changed, but I'm getting to see family tomorrow.
Nice.
So I'm excited about that. It's going to be a long 9 hours driving tomorrow. So, but so yeah, so Monday next week we could have a full topic, and resume our week because I'll be at Dad's house, and then Scott and I will figure out when we'll get to see each other too. So,
well, that's like a few states away though. So how's that going to work?
I will be in Florida by Saturday.
Oh, I thought you're going to be by your dad's next week. Your dad's
Monday through Friday I'll be at Dad's. So.
Well, wait a minute. You're going from
I'm in Georgia.
To
Florida. Yeah, to Florida.
Scott's in Florida.
Yeah, I'll be in Florida. I'll be 4 hours away from him.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, well, all right, never mind.
Yeah.
Because I'm thinking like you're going to get together, but if you're in New York, how?
No, I'm 4 hours away. I'll be from.
Got it.
All right, you guys have a good week. Have a good weekend, and we will see you next week.
Thanks, everybody. Be safe out there.
Have a good one, Brian. Hold on.